Most people wake up tomorrow and lose the day before their feet touch the floor. Not because they lack ambition, not because they are lazy, because they are running software they never installed. Here is what nobody explains. Roughly 40% of your daily actions are not decisions. They are automated responses. You did not choose to reach for your phone before your eyes fully opened. You did not decide to skip breakfast again. You did not consciously pick the excuse you gave yourself at 6:15 this morning. Something else made those calls. And that something is running whether you approve or not. So the real question is not, how do I get motivated? The question is, what is actually controlling my behavior when I am not paying attention? This chapter will expose the mechanism. And once you see how it operates, you will understand exactly why your last 17 attempts at change collapsed. Let us start with the lie. The self-improvement industry sells motivation like it is fuel. Get enough of it, and you will finally move. Find the right video, the right quote, the right moment of inspiration, and change becomes inevitable. Except it does not work that way. Motivation is not fuel. Motivation is weather. It comes. It goes. You cannot store it. You cannot schedule it. And building your entire transformation strategy on weather is why you keep getting rained out. Think about what happens. You feel fired up on Sunday night. You write down goals. You set alarms. You feel like this time is different. By Wednesday afternoon, that fire is smoke. By Friday, you cannot even remember what you were so excited about. The feeling faded because feelings fade. That is what they do. That is their biological function. Neuroscientists have mapped this pattern precisely. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for long-term planning and impulse control, gets tired. It fatigues like a muscle. By the end of a demanding day, your capacity for disciplined choice drops significantly. This is not weakness. This is physiology. And every strategy that depends on willpower ignores this basic fact about how your brain actually operates. So if motivation is unreliable by design, what do the people who actually sustain change use instead? Systems, not goals. Systems. A goal tells you where to point. A system determines whether you arrive. Every person who ever quit a diet had the goal of being healthier. Every person who abandoned their morning routine had the goal of being more productive. Every person who started a business and stopped had the goal of financial freedom. The goal was never the problem. The problem was the absence of an operating mechanism that works independent of how you feel on any given Tuesday. Consider what most people do when they want to change. They announce the destination. I want to lose 30 pounds. I want to wake up at 5. I want to read more books. Then they rely on enthusiasm to carry them forward. When the enthusiasm disappears, and it always disappears, they have nothing left. No structure, no fallback, no architecture that operates without emotional fuel. Now consider a different approach. Instead of announcing the destination, you engineer the path. You do not say, I will go to the gym. You place your workout clothes next to your bed, so the first thing you see in the morning is equipment. You do not say, I will eat healthier. You remove the foods that derail you from your kitchen entirely. You do not say, I will be more focused. You put your phone in another room during work hours, so the option to scroll does not exist. The difference is not discipline. The difference is design. Here is a distinction that matters. Amateurs perform when conditions are right, when they feel rested, when the timing is good, when motivation shows up like a generous friend. Professionals perform on schedule. They have built structures that execute regardless of internal weather. They have removed the negotiation. The decision was made once, in advance, and the environment enforces it automatically. What is your architecture? When your alarm fires tomorrow at 6, what mechanism exists to move you from horizontal to vertical that does not depend on wanting to get up? When stress hits at work and your brain demands comfort, what friction stands between impulse and regret? When the work is boring and no one is watching and Netflix is one click away, what part of your identity keeps you in the chair? If the answer is, I just try harder, you are describing hope. Hope is not architecture. Hope is a wish wearing work clothes. Let me be direct about something. The problem is not that you lack information. You already know what to do. You know you should exercise. You know you should eat better. You know you should wake up earlier, focus deeper, waste less time. Knowledge is not your bottleneck. Execution is your bottleneck. And execution fails not because you are weak, but because you are fighting your own neurology with the wrong weapons. Your brain is designed to conserve energy. It is designed to seek comfort. It is designed to avoid friction and pursue the path of least resistance. These are not flaws. These are survival features that kept your ancestors alive. But in a modern environment filled with infinite distractions and instant gratification, those same features work against you. You cannot beat your brain with brute force. You have to redirect it. You have to build channels that guide behavior where you want it to go, the same way engineers build channels to direct water. The water does not decide to flow downhill. The channel makes the direction inevitable. That is what a system does. It makes the right behavior inevitable and the wrong behavior difficult. Now, I am not going to pretend there is one magic framework that fixes everything. But there is a structure that actually produces change, and it operates on 3 levers: trigger, friction, and identity. The trigger initiates the sequence. It is the cue that starts the behavior. Without a clear trigger, you rely on memory and motivation, both of which are unreliable. The friction determines ease. High friction behaviors happen less. Low friction behaviors happen more. If you want to do something consistently, reduce the friction to near zero. If you want to stop doing something, increase the friction until the behavior becomes inconvenient. The identity decides whether the behavior feels natural or forced. When an action aligns with who you believe you are, it requires little effort. When it conflicts with your self-image, every repetition feels like a battle. Miss any one of these 3 levers, and the system leaks. You can have perfect triggers, but if the friction is too high, you will still fail. You can reduce friction to 0, but if the behavior contradicts your identity, you will sabotage yourself. All 3 must align. We will build that structure piece by piece in the chapters ahead. But first, you need to understand why even well-designed systems fail for most people. It has nothing to do with the system itself. It has everything to do with a single moment that happens every morning, usually before you are fully conscious. A moment so small you probably never noticed it was a decision at all. A moment that sets the trajectory for everything that follows. That moment is the subject of the next chapter. And once you understand what is actually happening in those first 5 minutes after you wake, you will see exactly why some people build momentum while others drain it before the day even begins. The alarm is about to go off. The negotiation is about to start. And how you handle that negotiation determines far more than whether you get up on time. It determines who you become. Chapter 2: Systems over Goals, the Hidden Truth. Every January, roughly 40 million Americans set a fitness goal. By February, 80% have abandoned it. By March, gym attendance returns to baseline levels, as if the resolution never happened. Now here is the part that should disturb you. Those 40 million people were not pretending. They genuinely want to change. They paid money. They bought equipment. They told friends. They meant it. So what went wrong? The standard answer is discipline. They lacked willpower. They were not committed enough. They did not want it badly enough. That answer is wrong. And believing it keeps people trapped in a cycle of failure and self-blame that never ends. The real answer is structural. They used the wrong tool for the job. They set goals when they should have built systems. And that single error guaranteed their failure before they took the first step. Let me explain why goals, despite their popularity, are fundamentally broken as a change strategy. Problem 1. Goals create a pass-fail binary. You either hit the target or you do not. Lose 30 pounds or fail. Wake up at 5 every day or fail. Read 50 books this year or fail. This binary structure means that 99% of the journey feels like falling short. You are always in deficit until the moment of completion. And if completion never arrives, the entire effort registers as failure, even if you made significant progress. A system operates differently. A system asks, did I execute the process today? Yes or no? That is the only question. The outcome is a byproduct, not the measure. You are not failing until you hit 30 pounds. You are succeeding every single day you run the system. The psychology is completely different. Problem 2. Goals defer satisfaction. They train you to believe that happiness exists in the future, at the finish line, when the goal is achieved. I will feel good when I lose the weight. I will be proud when I get the promotion. I will relax when I hit the revenue target. This creates a perpetual state of inadequacy. You are never enough right now. You are always chasing a future that keeps receding. Systems create present tense satisfaction. You feel capable today because you executed today. The reward is immediate and renewable. You do not have to wait months or years to feel successful. Success is available this afternoon. Problem 3. Goals are static in a dynamic environment. You set a goal based on your current understanding, your current circumstances, your current self. But circumstances change. Information changes. You change. A goal set in January may be irrelevant by June. It may be too easy. It may be too hard. It may be pointed at something you no longer want. Systems adapt. Because a system focuses on process rather than outcome, it can flex when conditions shift. The direction adjusts. The mechanism keeps running. You are not locked into a target that no longer makes sense. Problem 4. Goals create competition with your future self. When you set a goal, you are essentially making a promise on behalf of someone who does not exist yet. Future you. You assume future you will have the energy, the time, the motivation to deliver. But future you wakes up tired. Future you has a crisis at work. Future you does not feel like honoring a commitment made by past you during a moment of inspiration. Systems eliminate this problem. A system does not depend on future you being heroic. A system assumes future you will be tired, distracted, and unmotivated. And it works anyway, because the environment and the triggers and the friction have been prearranged to make execution nearly automatic. Problem 5. Goals end. This is perhaps the most dangerous flaw. What happens when you achieve a goal? The structure disappears. The motivation disappears. The behavior that got you there has no reason to continue. This is why so many people lose weight and regain it. Finish a project and collapse. Hit a milestone and drift. The goal provided temporary scaffolding, and when the scaffolding came down, so did the behavior. Systems persist. A system is not about reaching a destination and stopping. A system is about becoming a person who operates a certain way indefinitely. There is no finish line because the system is the point. The results are just evidence that the system is functioning. Now, I am not saying goals are useless. Goals provide direction. They help you decide which system to build. If you want to write a book, that goal tells you to build a daily writing system. If you want to run a marathon, that goal tells you to build a progressive training system. The goal is the compass. The system is the vehicle. But most people stare at the compass and wonder why they are not moving. Let me give you a concrete illustration. 2 people want to become writers. Person 1 sets a goal, finish a novel in 12 months. Person 2 builds a system. Write 500 words every morning before checking email. Person 1 waits for inspiration, writes in bursts, has productive weeks and empty weeks, constantly measures progress against the 12-month deadline, feels behind most of the time, eventually abandons the project around month 4 when life gets complicated and the gap between current output and required output becomes demoralizing. Person 2 does not think about the novel as a goal. Person 2 thinks about this morning. Just this morning. 500 words before email. Some days the writing is good. Some days it is garbage. Does not matter. The system ran. After 12 months, Person 2 has over 180,000 words. Multiple drafts. A completed manuscript. Not because of superior discipline. Because of superior architecture. Same ambition. Same time frame. Completely different structure. Completely different result. Here is a question worth sitting with. What would your life look like if you stopped setting goals entirely and only built systems? What if instead of lose 20 pounds, you built a system where healthy food is the only food in your kitchen and a 10-minute walk happens after every meal? What if instead of save more money, you built a system where 20% of every deposit automatically transfers to an account you cannot easily access? What if instead of be more productive, you built a system where your phone lives in another room during work hours and your first 90 minutes each day are blocked for deep work with no exceptions? The goal setter hopes conditions will be favorable. The system builder makes conditions irrelevant. Now, there is a trap here. Some people hear this and immediately start designing elaborate systems, complex routines, detailed schedules, comprehensive tracking spreadsheets. They engineer a beautiful machine on paper and then discover they cannot actually run it in reality. Why? Because they skipped the most important variable, the one thing that determines whether any system actually executes. It is not the trigger. It is not the friction. It is not the environment. It is identity. You can build the perfect system, but if running that system conflicts with who you believe you are, you will sabotage it. Every time, unconsciously, reliably, your self-image will override your structure. This is why two people can follow the same program and get opposite results. One person's identity aligns with the behavior. The other person's identity resists it. Same inputs, different internal operating systems. The next chapter will show you how identity actually forms, why most people are running an outdated version, and how to deliberately engineer the self-image that makes your system feel like home instead of a prison. Because discipline is not about forcing yourself to do hard things. Discipline is about becoming someone for whom those things are no longer hard. Chapter 3: Identity Engineering. Become before you achieve. A smoker tries to quit. Someone offers a cigarette. The smoker says, "No thanks, I am trying to quit." Another smoker tries to quit. Someone offers a cigarette. This smoker says, "No thanks, I do not smoke." Same situation, same offer, same goal, completely different internal architecture. And research in behavioral psychology suggests the second smoker is significantly more likely to stay quit long-term. Why? Because the first smoker is fighting against identity. The second smoker is operating from identity. The first smoker still sees themselves as a smoker who is attempting to behave differently. Every refused cigarette is a battle. Every craving is a test of willpower. The identity and the behavior are in conflict, and that conflict is exhausting. The second smoker has shifted the foundation. They are not resisting a behavior. They are expressing who they are. The cigarette is not a temptation to fight. It is simply irrelevant. You do not struggle to refuse things that have nothing to do with you. This is the difference between behavior change and identity change. And it is the reason most self-improvement efforts feel like pushing a boulder uphill. You have probably experienced this. You start a new habit, exercise, healthy eating, waking up early. For the first few days or weeks, it works. You feel momentum. Then slowly, gradually, the old patterns return. Not because you stopped caring. Not because the habit was too hard, because your identity never updated. You were a sedentary person doing exercise. You were an unhealthy eater choosing salads. You were a night owl forcing yourself awake. The behavior was foreign to the self-image. And self-image always wins in the long run. Here is the principle. Your actions are a reflection of your identity. You do what you believe a person like you does. If you believe you are an athlete, you train. If you believe you are a writer, you write. If you believe you are disciplined, you execute. Not because discipline is easy, because discipline is simply what someone like you does. The reverse is also true. If you believe you are lazy, you will find ways to confirm that belief. If you believe you are bad with money, you will spend. If you believe you cannot stick to things, you will quit. Not because you want to fail, because you are being consistent with who you think you are. Identity is not fixed at birth. It is constructed through evidence. Every action you take is a vote for the person you are becoming. Skip a workout, and you cast a vote for being someone who skips workouts. Complete a workout, and you cast a vote for being someone who trains. The votes accumulate. The majority wins. And eventually, the majority becomes your self-image. This is why small actions matter far more than people realize. A single workout does not transform your body, but it does cast a vote. A single page of reading does not make you educated, but it does cast a vote. A single hour of focused work does not build an empire, but it does cast a vote. The question is not whether your actions are big enough to produce immediate results. The question is, what identity are your actions voting for? Most people have never examined this question. They inherited an identity from childhood, from parents, from culture, from random experiences. They are running an operating system that was installed decades ago by people who may not have had their best interests in mind, and they have never performed an upgrade. What if your current self-image is not a reflection of who you actually are? What if it is just a collection of outdated stories you accepted without examination? Consider how identity forms in the first place. A child tries something and fails. A parent says, "You are not good at that." The child accepts the label. Years later, the adult still avoids that activity, still believes the story, still operates within the constraint. Not because the constraint is real, because the story was never questioned. Or a child succeeds at something and gets praised. "You are so smart. You are a natural." The child builds an identity around that label. Years later, the adult avoids challenges that might threaten the label. They do not try hard things because failure would mean they are not actually smart. The identity that was meant to empower has become a cage. These patterns run deep. They operate below conscious awareness, and they filter every decision you make through a question you rarely hear yourself asking. Is this what someone like me does? So how do you change an identity that was built over decades? Not through affirmation. You cannot just repeat, "I am confident," in the mirror and override years of accumulated evidence. Your brain is not that gullible. It knows the difference between wishful thinking and demonstrated reality. Identity changes through evidence. New actions create new evidence. New evidence creates new beliefs. New beliefs create new identity. The sequence matters. You do not believe first and act second. You act first and believe second. This is counterintuitive. Most people think they need to feel like a runner before they start running. They need to feel like a writer before they start writing. They need to feel confident before they take action. It works the other way around. You become a runner by running. You become a writer by writing. You become confident by doing things that require confidence. The identity follows the behavior, not the reverse. But here's where it gets precise. Not all actions carry equal weight. Some actions cast stronger votes than others. The actions that carry the most weight are the ones performed under resistance. When it is easy, anyone can show up. When it is hard, showing up means something. That workout you did when you were exhausted? Stronger vote. That page you wrote when you had no inspiration? Stronger vote. That difficult conversation you had when you wanted to avoid it? Stronger vote. The votes cast under friction are the ones that actually shift the needle. This is why comfort is the enemy of identity change. If you only act when conditions are favorable, you never generate the high-value evidence that rewrites self-image. You need reps under resistance. You need proof that you show up even when you do not feel like it. Let me give you a practical framework for engineering identity change. Step 1. Define the target identity with precision. Not, "I want to be healthier." That is vague. I am someone who moves their body every single day, regardless of circumstances. That is specific. Not, "I want to be more productive." Instead, I am someone who protects their first 3 hours for deep work. The identity statement must be concrete enough that you can immediately know whether your next action aligns with it or contradicts it. Step 2. Design the minimum viable action. What is the smallest behavior that casts a vote for that identity? Not an hour at the gym. One push-up. Not writing a chapter. Writing one sentence. Not meditating for 30 minutes. 3 breaths with eyes closed. The goal is to make the vote so small that you cannot fail to cast it. You are not building the habit yet. You are building the identity. The habit scales later. Step 3. Stack the evidence. Execute the minimum viable action with ruthless consistency. Every single day, no exceptions. Not because the action itself is transformative, because each repetition is a vote. And votes accumulate. After 30 days of daily push-ups, you have cast 30 votes for being someone who exercises daily. After 60 days, 60 votes. At some point, the majority shifts. And when the majority shifts, the identity updates. Step 4. Increase the difficulty only after the identity is established. Most people fail because they scale too fast. They try to build behavior and identity simultaneously. That is too much friction. First, lock in the identity with embarrassingly small actions. Then, once you genuinely see yourself as someone who does this thing, increase the intensity. The behavior grows from the identity, not the other way around. Now, there is a specific moment where identity is most vulnerable. A moment where all your careful engineering can collapse in seconds. It happens every morning, usually before you are fully conscious, in the space between your alarm and your first decision. That moment is a daily referendum on your identity, and most people lose it without even realizing a vote was cast. The next chapter will take you inside those critical first 5 minutes. You will see exactly what is happening neurologically, why the snooze button is not a minor convenience, but a fundamental identity threat, and how to win the first battle of the day so that every battle afterward becomes easier. Because the person you are at 6 in the morning is the person you will be at 6 in the evening. And right now, that person is being decided without your conscious participation. Chapter 4. The Snooze Button Test. The alarm sounds at 6 in the morning. You are not awake. Not really. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational decision-making, is still offline. It takes roughly 20 minutes after waking for that region to fully activate. But in that fog, a decision is already being made. Your hand moves toward the phone. The snooze button appears. 9 more minutes. What is the harm? You are tired. You deserve rest. You will definitely get up when it rings again. You press it. And in that single gesture, before your feet have touched the floor, before your eyes have fully opened, before you have had a single conscious thought, you have already lost. Not lost 9 minutes. Lost something far more expensive. You have just cast the first vote of the day for a specific identity. The identity of someone who negotiates with themselves. Someone who breaks promises when keeping them is inconvenient. Someone whose word to themselves means nothing when comfort is on the line. That vote echoes through every decision that follows. Here is what most people do not understand. The snooze button is not a minor convenience feature. It is a daily referendum on your self-trust. And every time you press it, you are telling your subconscious mind a very specific message. My commitments to myself are optional. Think about what actually happened. Last night, you made a decision. You set an alarm for 6 because you determined that waking at 6 served your goals, your values, your future self. That was a promise, a contract between current you and future you. Then morning arrived. Conditions changed. The bed was warm. The room was dark. The world outside felt demanding. And faced with mild discomfort, you broke the contract. You decided that the version of you who set the alarm did not have the authority to bind the version of you who had to honor it. Now multiply this across months and years. Thousands of tiny broken contracts. Thousands of moments where you prove to yourself that your own commitments are negotiable. Is it any surprise that you struggle to trust yourself with bigger commitments? You have trained yourself, through repetition, to believe that your word is worthless. This is not about 6 versus 6:15. This is about the relationship you have with yourself. Consider 2 people. Both set alarms for 6. Both feel the same resistance when it rings. Both want to stay in bed. Person 1 presses snooze. Gets up at 6:27, groggy and rushed. Starts the day already behind. Already compromised. Already carrying the subtle weight of a broken promise. That weight is invisible but real. It affects every subsequent choice, every moment of resistance, every opportunity to take the easy path. Person 2 feels the same resistance, the same desire to stay horizontal. But person 2 has made a decision in advance. Not a decision about this morning, a decision about identity. I am someone who gets up when the alarm rings. Period. Regardless of how I feel. So when the alarm sounds and the resistance arrives, there is no negotiation. The decision was made days ago, weeks ago, years ago. The alarm is not a question. It is a cue. And person 2 is vertical before the mind has time to generate objections. Same circumstances, same physiology, same desire to stay in bed. Completely different internal architecture. What separates them is not willpower. Person 2 is not fighting harder. Person 2 has simply removed the fight entirely. There is no battle because there is no decision to make. The policy was established in advance, and the policy runs automatically. This is the principle. You cannot win a negotiation with yourself at 6 in the morning. Your rational brain is offline. Your emotional brain is online. And your emotional brain does not care about your goals. It cares about comfort. Right now. Immediately. If you enter that moment without a pre-made decision, you will lose. Not sometimes, every time, because you are negotiating from a position of weakness against an opponent who holds all the leverage. The solution is to never enter the negotiation. How? By making the decision before the moment arrives. By establishing a policy so clear and so non-negotiable that when the alarm sounds, there is nothing to consider. You do not ask yourself how you feel. You do not weigh the pros and cons. You do not give your comfort-seeking brain a vote. You simply execute. The way you execute any automatic behavior. Without thought, without deliberation, without friction. Let me give you the precise mechanism. Tonight, before you sleep, you will establish what I call a wake protocol. Not a goal to wake up earlier. Not a hope to get up when the alarm rings. A protocol. A predetermined sequence that runs without conscious intervention. The protocol has 3 components. Component 1, the alarm placement. Your phone does not stay within arm's reach. It goes across the room, far enough that silencing it requires you to stand. This is friction engineering. You are not relying on willpower to get vertical. You are making horizontal snoozing physically impossible. The environment enforces the behavior. Component 2, the immediate action. The moment your feet touch the floor, you do not think. You do not check the time. You do not evaluate how you feel. You execute one specific physical action that has been predetermined. For some people, it is drinking a glass of water placed next to the alarm. For others, it is walking directly to the bathroom and splashing cold water on the face. For others, it is stepping outside for 60 seconds of cold air. The specific action matters less than its immediacy. You are creating a bridge between alarm and wakefulness that bypasses the negotiation window entirely. Component 3, the identity anchor. As you execute that immediate action, you say one sentence to yourself. Not out loud if that feels strange. Internally, the sentence is, I am someone who keeps promises to myself. That is it. You are not hyping yourself up. You are not generating motivation. You are casting a vote, reinforcing the identity, connecting this small act of discipline to the larger architecture of who you are becoming. Alarm rings, feet on floor, immediate action, identity anchor. The whole sequence takes less than 90 seconds. And in those 90 seconds, you have won the first battle of the day. Why does this matter so much? Because momentum is real. The way you start shapes the way you continue. When the first battle and the second becomes easier. When the second and the third feels natural. You build what psychologists call self-efficacy, the belief that you can execute when execution is required. Each small victory deposits evidence into your identity account. By noon, you are not the person who broke a promise before breakfast. You are the person who has already won 5 battles. That changes how you see yourself. And how you see yourself changes what you do. The reverse is equally true. Lose the first battle, and the second becomes harder. Start the day with compromise, and compromise becomes the theme. You have already proven that your standards are flexible. Why would they suddenly become rigid at the office? At the gym? At the moment of temptation? The snooze button is not a small thing. It is the first domino, and dominoes fall in the direction you push them. Now, there is something else happening in those early morning minutes. Something that determines whether your wake protocol succeeds or fails long-term. It has to do with your environment, not just where you place the alarm, the entire physical architecture of your life, the invisible forces that make certain behaviors easy and others difficult. Most people are fighting their environment every single day without realizing it. They rely on willpower to overcome friction that should not exist in the first place. They make every good choice hard and every bad choice easy, then wonder why they keep failing. The next chapter will show you how to flip that equation. You will learn to design spaces where discipline becomes the path of least resistance, where good choices are automatic and bad choices require effort. Because the strongest version of yourself should not have to fight the room you live in. The room should fight for you. Chapter 5, Environment Architecture, Design Your Success. In the 1970s, researchers in Amsterdam wanted to understand why some hospital patients recovered faster than others. Same procedures, same medical staff, same post-operative care, yet recovery times varied dramatically. They examined every variable: age, fitness level, severity of condition. Nothing explained the gap. Then someone noticed something subtle. Some rooms had windows facing a brick wall. Others had windows facing a small garden with trees. That was the only difference. Patients with the garden view recovered significantly faster. They required less pain medication. They reported better moods. They went home earlier. Same hospital, same treatment, different environment, different outcome. Your environment is not a backdrop. It is an active participant in every decision you make. And right now, it is probably working against you. Most people think behavior change is about internal resources: willpower, motivation, discipline, mental toughness. They believe success comes from being stronger than their impulses, fighting harder against temptation, grinding through resistance with sheer force of character. This is exhausting, and it fails. Here's why. Every environment is designed to produce certain behaviors. Walk into a casino and notice how the architecture guides you. No windows, no clocks, disorienting layouts that keep you wandering. The oxygen is pumped slightly higher to keep you alert. The sounds of slot machines are tuned to specific frequencies that trigger dopamine release. Nothing is accidental. Every detail has been engineered to keep you gambling longer. Now think about your own environment. Your bedroom, your kitchen, your workspace, your phone. Who designed those spaces? Was it you, deliberately, with your goals in mind? Or did those environments just happen, accumulating objects and arrangements without intention? Most people live in environments that were never designed. They are default spaces filled with whatever arrived. And those default spaces are producing default behaviors. Scrolling, snacking, procrastinating, avoiding, not because you are weak, because the environment makes those behaviors easier than the alternatives. This is the principle. Behavior flows toward the path of least resistance. Always, without exception, your brain is constantly calculating the effort required for any action, and it naturally drifts toward lower friction. This is not laziness. This is neurological efficiency. Your brain is trying to conserve energy. It will take the easier path unless something intervenes. The intervention is not willpower. The intervention is design. Consider friction. Friction is any obstacle between impulse and action. Time, distance, steps required, complexity. The more friction between you and a behavior, the less likely that behavior occurs. The less friction, the more likely. This works in both directions. You can increase friction for behaviors you want to eliminate. You can decrease friction for behaviors you want to adopt. And you can do both without relying on motivation or discipline at all. Let me give you examples. You want to stop checking your phone first thing in the morning. The low-friction approach. Phone on the nightstand. Face up, notifications visible. You wake up, the screen glows, your hand reaches automatically. Zero friction. The behavior is almost inevitable. The high-friction redesign. Phone charges in another room. When you wake, the phone is not visible, not within reach. Getting it requires standing, walking, leaving the bedroom. Each step is friction. Each step is a moment where the automatic impulse can be interrupted. Most mornings, you will not bother. Not because you are disciplined, because you are efficient. The friction made the behavior inconvenient, so your brain chose something else. You want to eat healthier. The low-friction environment. Pantry filled with processed snacks at eye level, fruit hidden in the bottom drawer of the refrigerator. When hunger strikes, your eyes find the chips first. Your hand follows your eyes. You eat what is easy. The high-friction redesign. Remove the snacks entirely. Not hidden. Removed. Place a bowl of fruit on the counter where you cannot miss it. Cut vegetables in advance and store them at eye level in clear containers. When hunger strikes, the healthy option is now the path of least resistance. You did not increase your willpower. You decreased the friction for the right choice and increased the friction for the wrong one. You want to exercise in the morning. The low-friction failure. Workout clothes in a drawer, gym bag unpacked, equipment scattered. When the alarm rings, you face a sequence of small obstacles. Find the clothes. Pack the bag. Locate the shoes. Each obstacle is a decision point. Each decision point is an opportunity for resistance to win. The high-friction redesign. The night before, You place workout clothes next to your bed, not in the closet. Next to the bed, arranged in the order you will put them on. Shoes beside them, bag packed by the door. When you wake, the path is clear. There is nothing to decide, nothing to find, nothing to prepare. You simply follow the sequence that was prearranged. Friction removed, behavior enabled. Do you see the pattern? You are not becoming more disciplined. You are becoming a better architect. The most successful people are not those with the strongest willpower. They are those who have structured their lives so that willpower is rarely required. They have engineered environments where the right choices are obvious, easy, and automatic. They have made discipline the default rather than the exception. Now, most people resist this idea. It feels like cheating. It feels like real discipline should be harder. There is a cultural belief that struggle is noble, that fighting against yourself is virtuous, that the hard path is the meaningful path. This belief is not just wrong. It is expensive. It costs you energy that could be spent on actual work. It costs you willpower that could be reserved for genuine emergencies. It costs you results that could have been achieved with less suffering. Smart architecture is not weakness. It is leverage. Here is a diagnostic question. Look around the space you spend the most time in. Ask yourself, what behavior does this environment make easy? If your desk faces a window with a distracting view, the environment makes distraction easy. If your television is the centerpiece of your living room, the environment makes passive consumption easy. If your refrigerator is filled with convenient junk, the environment makes unhealthy eating easy. Now reverse the question. What behavior does this environment make difficult? If your books are buried in a closet, the environment makes reading difficult. If your exercise equipment is in the garage behind boxes, the environment makes working out difficult. If your journal is in a drawer you never open, the environment makes reflection difficult. The gap between what your environment enables and what your goals require is the friction tax you pay every single day. Some people pay this tax for years, draining willpower on battles that should not exist, exhausting themselves against obstacles they could simply remove. The alternative is a friction audit. Walk through your space with new eyes. For every behavior you want to increase, ask, how can I make this easier? Fewer steps, shorter distance, more visible, more accessible. For every behavior you want to decrease, ask, how can I make this harder? More steps, greater distance, less visible, less accessible. Small changes compound. Move the phone charger out of the bedroom and your morning changes. Put a water bottle on your desk and your hydration changes. Place a book on your pillow and your evening changes. Remove the chair from in front of the television and your leisure time changes. None of these require motivation. None require willpower. They require 10 minutes of thoughtful rearrangement and a willingness to let your environment do the heavy lifting. There is one more layer to this. Environment includes people. You are the average of the behaviors you observe most frequently. If your social circle eats poorly, you will drift toward poor eating. If your colleagues complain constantly, you will drift toward complaining. If your friends scroll endlessly, you will normalize scrolling. This is not weakness. This is social calibration. Your brain is constantly adjusting to match the norms of your tribe, which means your choice of environment includes your choice of company. The people you spend time with are either friction against your goals or friction against your excuses. There is no neutral. Now, even with perfect environmental design, there is still a moment of initiation. The first second of beginning. The transition from stillness to motion. This moment is where most habits die, not because the habit is hard, but because starting feels hard. The next chapter will give you a technique so simple it feels almost insulting. A method for making the start so small, so frictionless, so ridiculously easy that your brain cannot generate a valid objection. It is called the 2-minute rule, and it will make failure nearly impossible. Chapter 6. The 2-minute rule. Make it impossible to fail. A man wants to start running. He has not exercised in years. He buys new shoes, downloads a training app, reads articles about proper form, sets a goal to run 5 kilometers 3 times per week. Monday arrives. The alarm goes off. He thinks about the 5 kilometers ahead, the effort, the discomfort, the time required. His brain calculates the cost and quietly suggests, maybe start tomorrow. Tomorrow feels better. Tomorrow he will be more prepared. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next month. The shoes sit in the closet, tags still attached. The app sends notifications he swipes away. The goal remains a goal, untouched by action. Now consider a different approach. Same man, same lack of fitness, same years of inactivity. But this time, the goal is different. The goal is to put on running shoes and step outside. That is it. Not run, not jog, just shoes on, door open, body outside. 2 minutes maximum. Monday arrives. The alarm goes off. He thinks about putting on shoes. His brain calculates the cost. Negligible. Almost embarrassing how small. There is no valid objection. He puts on the shoes, steps outside, stands on the sidewalk, and then something interesting happens. He is already outside. The shoes are already on. Walking a few steps feels natural. Walking becomes a slow jog. The slow jog continues for 10 minutes. He returns home having done more than he planned, not because he forced himself, but because starting was no longer the obstacle. This is the 2-minute rule, and it is the most underestimated tool in behavior change. The rule is simple. When you want to build a new habit, scale it down until it takes 2 minutes or less to complete. Want to read more? The habit is not read 30 minutes before bed. The habit is read 1 page. Want to meditate? The habit is not meditate for 20 minutes. The habit is sit in the meditation position and take 3 breaths. Want to write? The habit is not write 1,000 words. The habit is open the document and write 1 sentence. This sounds almost insultingly simple, and that is exactly why it works. Your brain has a specific resistance pattern when facing any task. The resistance is not proportional to the difficulty of the entire task. It is concentrated almost entirely at the point of initiation. Starting is where the friction lives. Once you are in motion, continuing is significantly easier than beginning was. Think about your own experience. How many times have you dreaded a workout, then felt fine once you started? How many times have you avoided a phone call for days, then realized it took 3 minutes and was painless? How many times have you procrastinated on a project, finally begun, and wondered why you waited so long? The task was never the problem. The start was the problem. The 2-minute rule attacks this directly. It shrinks the start until resistance cannot find a foothold. Your brain looks for reasons to object and finds none. 2 minutes, 1 page, 3 breaths. The cost is so low that refusal feels absurd. But here is where people misunderstand. The goal is not the 2-minute action itself. The goal is to become the kind of person who shows up. The 2 minutes is a gateway. It gets you through the door. What happens after you cross the threshold is almost always more than you planned. The man who commits to putting on running shoes does not stop at the sidewalk forever. The person who commits to 1 page does not read single pages for the rest of their life. The writer who commits to 1 sentence does not produce 1-sentence careers. The small commitment initiates the motion. The motion generates its own momentum. This is not theory. It is physics applied to behavior. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. Your habits follow the same law. The hardest part is overcoming the initial inertia. Once you are moving, continuation requires far less force than initiation did. The 2-minute rule provides the minimum viable force to overcome inertia. Now, there is a psychological trap to avoid. Some people use the 2-minute rule, but secretly expect themselves to do more. They tell themselves just 1 page, while internally demanding 30 minutes of reading. This is self-deception, and the brain recognizes it. The resistance returns because the actual commitment is larger than the stated commitment. The rule only works if you genuinely permit yourself to stop after 2 minutes. Not as a trick, as a real boundary. You must be willing to put on the shoes and immediately go back inside. Willing to read 1 page and close the book. Willing to write 1 sentence and shut the laptop. When the permission is genuine, the pressure dissolves. And paradoxically, when the pressure dissolves, you almost always continue. Not because you have to, because you want to. Because starting was the only thing standing between you and the behavior you actually desired. Let me give you a practical framework for applying this. Take any habit you have been struggling to build. Write it down in its ideal form. Exercise for 45 minutes. Write 2,000 words daily. Meditate every morning for 20 minutes. Now reduce it, then reduce it again. Keep reducing until you reach something that takes 2 minutes or less and requires almost no willpower to execute. 45 minutes of exercise becomes, put on workout clothes. 2,000 words becomes, write 1 sentence. 20 minutes of meditation becomes, sit on the cushion. This reduced version is your entry point, not your destination. Your entry point. You are not committing to the full habit. You are committing only to crossing the threshold. What happens beyond the threshold is optional, and that optionality is what makes the crossing possible. The second part of the framework is ritual linking. Attach your 2-minute habit to something you already do without fail. You already brush your teeth. You already make coffee. You already sit down at your desk. You already get into bed. These existing behaviors are anchors. Attach the new habit directly after an anchor. After I brush my teeth, I will sit on the meditation cushion. After I pour my coffee, I will open my journal and write 1 sentence. After I sit at my desk, I will close all tabs except the project I am working on. After I get into bed, I will read 1 page. The anchor provides the trigger. The 2-minute rule removes the resistance. Together, they create a sequence so low friction that skipping it actually requires more mental effort than doing it. There is one more element. Tracking. Not elaborate tracking. Not spreadsheets and apps and metrics. Simple tracking. A calendar on the wall. An X through each day you execute. The visual chain of X marks becomes its own motivation. You do not want to break the chain. Not because someone is watching. Because you are watching. And the evidence of your consistency becomes proof of your identity. Do not underestimate this. The chain of X marks is not just a record. It is accumulated votes for who you are becoming. Each mark says, I am someone who shows up. Each unbroken week says, I am someone who keeps commitments. Each month of consistency says, I am someone who can be trusted with larger goals. The 2-minute rule builds chains. The chains build identity. The identity builds capability. And capability is what allows you to eventually do the thing you originally wanted to do, not through force, but through earned expansion. Now, there is a deeper principle underneath all of this. A principle that explains why the 2-minute rule works, why environment design works, why the snooze button matters so much. Most people believe they need to feel motivated before they act. They wait for inspiration. They wait for energy. They wait for the right mood. And while they wait, nothing happens. The truth is exactly reversed. Action comes first. Feeling follows. You do not get motivated and then act. You act and then get motivated. Motion creates emotion, not the other way around. The next chapter will dismantle the myth of motivation completely. You will learn why waiting to feel ready guarantees you will never be ready. And you will discover the neurological mechanism that makes action the only reliable trigger for the states you have been waiting to feel. Stop waiting to feel like it. Start before you are ready. Chapter 7. Action precedes motivation. A writer sits at her desk. The document is open. The cursor blinks. She does not type. She is waiting to feel inspired. An hour passes. The inspiration does not arrive. She checks email instead. Scrolls through feeds, makes another cup of coffee, tells herself she will write when she feels ready. She never feels ready. The page stays blank. Across town, another writer sits at a desk. Same blank document, same blinking cursor, same complete absence of inspiration. But this writer does not wait. She types a sentence. It is a bad sentence. She types another, also bad. She keeps typing. 5 minutes in, something shifts. The words start connecting. The resistance fades. 30 minutes later, she has written 1,000 words. Not because inspiration arrived, because she started without it. The first writer believes in a sequence. Motivation leads to action. Feel inspired, then write. Feel energized, then exercise. Feel confident, then speak. The feeling comes first. The behavior follows. This sequence is backwards. And believing it keeps people paralyzed for years. Here is what actually happens in your brain. When you take action, even small action, even action you do not feel like taking, your brain releases dopamine. Not as a reward for completion, as a response to engagement. The neurochemistry of motivation is triggered by motion, not by waiting. This means the feeling you are waiting for is on the other side of the action you are avoiding. You do not feel like exercising. You exercise anyway. 5 minutes in, you feel like exercising. You did not feel like writing. You wrote anyway. 10 minutes in, the words flow. You did not feel like having the difficult conversation. You started talking anyway. Midway through, the anxiety dissolved. The motivation was never going to arrive in advance. It was always waiting for you to move first. This is not positive thinking. This is neuroscience. Your brain is a prediction machine. It allocates resources based on what you are actually doing, not what you are thinking about doing. When you sit on the couch thinking about the gym, your brain does not prepare for exercise. It prepares for sitting. When you stand up and put on your shoes, the preparation begins. Blood flow shifts. Hormones adjust. The body readies itself for the activity you have initiated. Action is the trigger. Feeling is the response. Most people have this inverted. They treat motivation as a prerequisite, a ticket required for entry. No ticket, no entry. So they wait at the gate, hoping someone will hand them a ticket, not realizing they can walk through any time they choose. Think about how children operate. A child does not wait to feel like playing. The child starts playing, and the feeling of fun emerges from the play. A child does not wait to feel curious before exploring. The child explores, and curiosity ignites through the exploration. The child has not yet learned the adult habit of demanding emotional permission before taking action. Somewhere along the way, you learn to wait. You learn that action should feel good before you begin. You learn that resistance means stop. You learn that discomfort is a signal to retreat. These lessons are wrong, and unlearning them is essential. Resistance is not a stop sign. Resistance is a toll booth. You pay the toll and continue driving. The destination does not change because the toll exists. You do not turn around and go home because there was a small fee to proceed. The fee for any meaningful action is initial discomfort. That is the price. It is non-negotiable. No one feels like doing hard things before they start. Not the professional athlete, not the successful entrepreneur, not the disciplined monk. They feel the same resistance you feel. They simply do not interpret resistance as a reason to stop. Here is a reframe that changes everything. Stop asking, "Do I feel like doing this?" Start asking, "What would happen if I just started?" The first question gives your emotions veto power. The second question treats your emotions as passengers, not drivers. You can acknowledge that you do not feel like it and still begin. You can notice the resistance and move forward anyway. The feeling does not have to approve the action. This requires a fundamental shift in how you relate to discomfort. Most people have an adversarial relationship with discomfort. They treat it as an enemy to avoid. They structure their lives to minimize friction, challenge, and unpleasant sensation. And in doing so, they shrink. Because growth only happens in the territory beyond comfort. If you refuse to enter that territory until it feels comfortable, you will never enter at all. The alternative is to treat discomfort as information, not a command. Information. The discomfort says, "This is unfamiliar. This requires effort. This matters enough to trigger resistance." That is useful data. It tells you something important is on the other side. But the discomfort does not get to decide whether you proceed. You decide. Let me give you a practical application. The 5-second rule. When you feel the impulse to act on a goal, you have roughly 5 seconds before your brain generates objections. Within that window, you can move. After that window, the excuses arrive, and they are persuasive. So when you notice the impulse, count backward. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Move. Do not wait for the count to feel meaningful. Do not wait for motivation to surge. Just move. Stand up. Open the document. Pick up the phone. Begin. The countdown interrupts the hesitation loop. It creates a forcing function. It gives you a structured moment to act before the resistance consolidates. This is not about willpower. This is about speed. You are racing against your own objection generator. If you move fast enough, you win. If you hesitate, the generator catches up and you lose. There is another layer to this. The stories you tell yourself about motivation are often inherited, not chosen. Maybe you grew up hearing that creative work requires inspiration. Maybe you absorbed the myth that productive people wake up energized and eager. Maybe you watched movies where transformation happens in montages fueled by emotional breakthroughs. None of that is how it actually works. The most productive people you admire do not feel consistently motivated. They have simply divorced their actions from their feelings. They have trained themselves to execute regardless of internal weather. They do not wait for sunshine to go outside. They bring an umbrella and walk anyway. This is learnable. It is not a personality trait. It is a skill. And like any skill, it develops through repetition. Each time you act without motivation, you build evidence. The evidence says, I can move without feeling like it. I can produce without inspiration. I can show up without enthusiasm and still do valuable work. That evidence accumulates. It becomes belief. The belief becomes identity. And eventually, the question of whether you feel like doing something becomes irrelevant. You are no longer someone who needs motivation. You are someone who acts. Now, there is a specific challenge that arises once you have internalized this principle. You start showing up consistently. You act without waiting for feelings. The early results appear. And then, gradually, the novelty fades. The excitement disappears. The work becomes routine, ordinary, boring. This is where most people quit. Not at the beginning, when they lack motivation. At the middle, when they lack stimulation. The initial enthusiasm carried them through the first phase. Discipline carried them through the second. But the third phase requires something else entirely. It requires the ability to keep working when the work no longer feels meaningful. When no one is watching. When the progress is invisible. When every voice in your head suggests that maybe this path was wrong. Maybe the effort is wasted. Maybe you should try something new. This is the territory of mastery. The territory most people never reach because they abandon the path the moment it becomes boring. The next chapter is about that territory. The invisible work. The reps that no one celebrates. The days that feel like nothing is happening. And why those days, specifically, are the ones that determine everything. Because anyone can show up when the work is exciting. The question is whether you can show up when it is not. Chapter 8. Boredom Mastery. The Invisible Work. 8 months into training, the boxer stops feeling like a boxer. The early days had electricity. New gloves. New gym. The smell of leather and sweat. Every session felt like progress. Every sore muscle was proof of transformation. He told friends about his training. He imagined the fighter he was becoming. Now the gym looks the same as yesterday. The bag hangs in the same spot. The drills are identical. The coach gives the same corrections. Nothing feels new. Nothing feels exciting. The work has become repetitive, predictable, ordinary. He skips a Tuesday, then a Thursday, then a week. Not because training got harder, because it got boring. This is where most people die. Not at the start, where motivation is absent. Not at the obstacle, where challenge is high. At the plateau, where stimulation disappears. The beginning of any pursuit is fueled by novelty. Everything is fresh. Progress is rapid. Feedback is immediate. You can feel yourself changing. Then the curve flattens. The gain's slow. The work that once excited you becomes routine. You have learned the basics. You are no longer terrible, but you are not yet great. You are in the middle, the gray zone where nothing dramatic happens. This is the most dangerous phase of any transformation. Because in this phase, your brain starts generating alternative stories. Maybe this is not the right path. Maybe you should try something different. Maybe the lack of excitement is a signal that you have chosen wrong. The brain craves novelty. It interprets boredom as a sign that something is broken. Nothing is broken. This is how mastery works. Consider what is actually happening beneath the surface. Skills are consolidating. Neural pathways are strengthening. Pattern recognition is deepening. The work you find boring is the work that is moving you from competent to exceptional. But the progress is invisible. It does not photograph well. It does not generate dopamine spikes. It just accumulates, quietly, in the dark. A seed does not look like growth. For weeks, it sits in soil, unseen. Nothing appears to be happening. A casual observer would conclude that nothing is working. But beneath the surface, roots are forming. Systems are developing. Infrastructure is being built that will eventually support a tree. Your boring Tuesday workout is a root. Your uninspired Wednesday writing session is a root. Your repetitive Thursday practice is a root. You cannot see the roots, but they are the only reason the tree will eventually stand. Most people dig up the seed to check if it is growing. They interrupt the invisible process by demanding visible proof, and then they wonder why nothing ever blooms. Here is what separates professionals from amateurs in any field. Amateurs work when they are inspired. Professionals work on a schedule. Amateurs seek stimulation. Professionals embrace repetition. Amateurs quit when the novelty fades. Professionals understand that the novelty was never the point. A professional basketball player does not get excited about free throw practice. The drill is boring. It has been boring for 10 years. But the professional practices anyway, because boring repetition is the price of automatic execution under pressure. The amateur thinks the professional has superhuman discipline. The professional knows they simply stopped requiring the work to be interesting. This is a critical mindset shift. You must divorce your effort from your emotional state. When you first started, effort and emotion were linked. You felt excited, so you worked hard. The excitement was the fuel. But excitement is a limited resource. It runs out. If your effort depends on excitement, your effort has an expiration date. Sustainable effort requires a different fuel source, not emotion, identity. You do not practice because it feels good today. You practice because you are someone who practices. You do not write because inspiration struck. You write because you are a writer and writers write. You do not train because the gym feels exciting. You train because training is what you do. The behavior becomes decoupled from the feeling. And when that happens, boredom loses its power. Boredom is just weather. The work continues regardless. Let me be direct about what this means practically. There will be days when you feel nothing. No motivation, no satisfaction, no sense of progress. The alarm goes off. You execute the routine. You go through the motions. And at the end, you feel exactly the same as you did at the beginning. No reward, no dopamine hit, no confirmation that any of this matters. Those are the most important days, because on those days, you are building something that cannot be built any other way. You are building the capacity to persist without feedback. You are proving to yourself that your commitment is unconditional. You are separating yourself from the vast majority of people who will only work when the work rewards them. The world is filled with people who start strong. It is relatively empty of people who continue when continuing feels pointless. Think about what you are actually selecting for when you show up on boring days. You are selecting for resilience, for durability, for the kind of toughness that does not depend on circumstances. These qualities cannot be developed when things are going well. They can only be developed when things are going nowhere and you keep going anyway. The athlete who trains when injured develops something the healthy athlete does not have. The entrepreneur who persists through failure develops something the first-time success does not have. The artist who creates without recognition develops something the overnight sensation does not have. The boring middle is not an obstacle to success. It is the filter that separates who will succeed from who will not. So how do you survive the boring middle? First, expect it. Do not be surprised when the excitement fades. Plan for it. Know that somewhere around week 6 or month 3 or year 1, depending on the pursuit, you will enter a phase where nothing feels rewarding. This is not a sign of failure. This is a sign that you are still on the path. Second, shrink the scope. When motivation was high, you could sustain long sessions. When motivation disappears, shrink to minimum viable execution. The 2-minute rule applies here. You do not need to have a great workout. You need to show up. You do not need to write brilliantly. You need to write something. Protect the streak. Keep the chain intact. Volume can fluctuate. Presence cannot. Third, zoom out. On any given day, progress is invisible. Over any given month, progress is measurable. Over any given year, progress is undeniable. You are too close to the painting to see the image. Step back. Look at the trajectory. The trajectory is the truth. Today's feeling is just noise. Fourth, remember why you started. Not the superficial reason. The deep reason. Not, I want to lose weight, but why you want to lose weight. Not, I want to build a business, but what that business means to your life, your family, your sense of purpose. Connect the boring Tuesday to the reason that actually matters. The reason does not make the work exciting, but it makes the work meaningful. And meaning sustains effort in ways that excitement never can. There is a specific moment that happens after you have survived the boring middle long enough. A moment where the repetition stops feeling like repetition, where the work stops feeling like work, where the identity shift completes and you are no longer someone who does this thing. You are simply this thing. The runner does not run. The runner is running. The writer does not write. The writer is writing. The distinction sounds subtle. It is not. When the behavior merges with identity, effort dissolves. You are not pushing a boulder uphill. You are water flowing downhill. The direction is natural. The resistance is gone. This is what waits on the other side of boredom. But you cannot skip to it. You must go through. Now, there is a practical mechanism that makes surviving the boring middle significantly easier. A simple tool that provides structure, accountability, and visual evidence of your persistence. It is called the chain method, and it turns consistency from an abstract virtue into a concrete game you can win every single day. The next chapter will show you exactly how it works, how to track without obsessing, how to build streaks that motivate rather than pressure, and how to use the fear of breaking the chain as fuel for the days when nothing else is working. Because discipline is not about being perfect, it is about never missing twice. Chapter 9. Don't break the chain. A comedian walks into his office every morning and writes jokes. Not because he has a deadline, not because he feels inspired, because there is a red X on the calendar and he refuses to break the chain. Jerry Seinfeld gave this advice at the peak of his career. Get a wall calendar. Every day you do the work, mark an X. After a few days, you have a chain. Your only job is to not break the chain. This method has built careers, transformed bodies, and written books. Not because it is sophisticated, because it exploits a fundamental quirk in human psychology. You hate losing more than you love winning. Behavioral economists call this loss aversion. The pain of losing something is roughly twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something equivalent. The chain method turns this quirk into fuel. Once you have a streak going, the streak itself becomes valuable. 14 days feels like an asset. 30 days feels like an investment. 60 days feels like identity. Breaking the chain is no longer just skipping a day. It is destroying something you built. That destruction keeps you moving on days when nothing else would. Here's how it works. Choose one behavior, not 5. 1. The behavior must be binary. Did I do it today? Yes or no? No partial credit. Get a physical calendar, not an app. Paper. Place it where you cannot avoid seeing it. Every day you execute, mark the day. Then watch the chain grow. The first few days feel arbitrary. Around day 7, something shifts. The chain has weight. By day 14, skipping feels costly. By day 30, the chain has become part of how you see yourself. The calendar externalizes your consistency. It makes the invisible visible. Most people fail at habits because the cost of skipping is invisible. Miss one workout and nothing observable changes. The chain creates an immediate cost. Miss today and the chain breaks. The streak resets. Something tangible is lost. Now skipping has a price you can see. But here is where people misunderstand. They think the goal is a perfect streak. They aim for 365 days unbroken. When they inevitably miss, they feel like failures. The chain broke. Why continue? Wrong frame. The goal is not perfection. The goal is resilience. And resilience is measured not by whether you miss, but by what you do after you miss. Never miss twice. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the beginning of a new habit. Missing once is a stumble. Missing twice is a direction. The first miss is forgivable. The second miss is a choice. When you miss, the only thing that matters is the next day. Show up tomorrow. Mark the calendar. Start a new chain. The people who build lasting change are not people who never miss. They are people who never let a miss become a collapse. They contain the damage. They return immediately. One day off does not undo 30 days on. But one day off followed by a second day off followed by a week of avoidance will undo everything. What happens after the miss is who you are. Here is your application. Choose the habit you most want to establish. Reduce it to minimum viable execution. If it is exercise, the minimum is putting on workout clothes. If it is writing, the minimum is one sentence. The bar must be low enough to clear on your worst day. Get a calendar. Mark today if you executed. Do not add a second habit until the first chain reaches 30 days. Consistency comes first. Volume comes later. When you miss, do not spiral. Get back on the calendar the very next day. Over time, the chains get longer. The misses get rarer. You look back at 6 months of calendar pages and see a pattern. Not perfection, persistence. That persistence is more valuable than any single streak. There is one chapter left. It is not about techniques or frameworks. It is about the person you were meant to be. The version of you taking shape with every chain you protect and every promise you keep. Because the point was never the habits. The point was always who you become by keeping them. Chapter 10. The person you were meant to be. Somewhere ahead of you, there is a version of yourself you have never met. This version wakes before the alarm. Not because waking is easy, because waking is simply what this person does. No negotiation. No snooze button referendum. The feet hit the floor. The day begins. This version does not wait to feel motivated. The work happens because the work is scheduled. Resistance still appears. It always appears. But resistance is no longer a stop sign. It is just weather. This person has learned to work in any weather. This version has a different relationship with discomfort. Where you see obstacle, this person sees toll booth. The discomfort is expected, paid, and passed through. The comfort zone that currently feels like safety has revealed itself as a cage. This version walked out of that cage a long time ago. This version carries a different identity. Not someone trying to be disciplined. Someone who is disciplined. The behaviors flow from self-image without friction. The identity and the action are aligned. That alignment feels like freedom. This version has survived the boring middle. Many times, the novelty faded and the work continued. The results plateaued and the work continued. This person knows something most people never learn. The boring middle is where mastery lies. This version of you is not imaginary. This version is inevitable if you stay on the path. But here is what nobody tells you. The path does not feel like progress most of the time. It feels like repetition. It feels like Tuesday again. It feels like small actions that do not seem to add up. And then one day, you look up, and you realize you are not the same person who started. The changes happen gradually. The morning resistance faded around month 3. The identity shift completed around month 6. The behaviors that required effort became automatic around month 9. There was no single moment of transformation, only the accumulation of days. This is how real change works. Not in breakthroughs, in aggregation, not in leaps, in steps. The compound effect is invisible until it is undeniable. You are standing at the beginning of that process right now. Everything in this book is a tool. Systems over goals, identity-based change, the Wake Protocol, environment architecture, the 2-minute rule, action preceding motivation, boredom mastery, the chain method, never missing twice. These tools work. They have built fortunes, transformed bodies, written books, and constructed lives their owners are proud of. But tools do not use themselves. You can close this book and return to the same patterns. The same snooze button, the same waiting for motivation, the same identity that keeps you trapped. Where you can start. Not tomorrow, not Monday. Now, put your phone in another room tonight. See what happens to your morning. Set out your workout clothes before bed. See what happens to your resistance. Write one sentence. Read one page. Do one push-up. Start a chain. Mark the calendar. The action does not have to be large. It has to be real. It has to be today. And it has to be followed by another action tomorrow. Small actions. Repeated daily. Protected fiercely. Compounded relentlessly. Anyone can understand this. Almost no one does it. The gap between knowing and doing is where dreams go to die. Do not be one of them. There will be mornings when you do not want to get up. Get up anyway. There will be days when the work feels pointless. Do the work anyway. There will be moments when quitting feels rational, when the voice builds a compelling case for stopping. Do not listen. The voice is not protecting you. It is keeping you comfortable. And comfort is where potential goes to die. The person you were meant to be is not waiting at some distant finish line. That person is being constructed right now. With every choice, every action, every kept promise, the alarm will ring tomorrow morning. Before your excuses assemble, you will face a choice. Snooze and vote for who you have always been. Rise and vote for who you are becoming. The choice is yours. Make it count.